All right, let's continue with the Antique Bible Part 2. We left off here at the second column. Not only does the Bible inculcate with sanctions of highest import a system of the purest morality, but in the person and character of our blessed Savior it exhibits a tangible illustration of that system. In him we have set before us what till the publication of the gospel the world had never seen, a model of feeling and action adapted to all times, places, and circumstances, and combining so much of wisdom, benevolence, and holiness that none can fathom its subtle sublimity, and yet presented in a form so simple that even a child may be made to understand and taught to love it. The Holy Scriptures are designed to satisfy the waste of the soul by showing how many may be reconciled to God, and so renew his spiritual life. And they furnish the means for the culture of an intellectual and moral nature in harmony with the new state. One of the strongest desires of our nature is to know ourselves and our future destiny. In all the ages, which there are many records, we find that thoughtful souls have felt this desire, and only true source of knowledge and consolation that has been written and preserved for our use is that which has come down to us in the care of the Hebrew race. In this book we find an idea of the one God and of the divine purpose in the work of creation and providence, of the fall and redemption of man. Viewed as a whole, the several parts of this work, from Genesis to Revelation, depend upon and sustain each other because they are all necessary to the completeness of the design. Divine wisdom must always select a proper instrument to do its required work, and we may therefore believe that the proof of the divine origin of the Scriptures does not depend on the character or fitness of any of the writers. There is a peculiar superhuman spirit appearing in the truths and precepts of this priceless record, in the purity and justice of its moral distinctions. Its moral law, which is the only correct standard in morals. Its account of the divine solicitude for the sins of men, and the means used to promote upright conduct. Its clear ideas of the mercy of the Divine Father. Its wonderful analysis of the character of man, his state of sin, and the change necessary to salvation. The peculiar character of redeemed souls, the certain punishment of wrongdoing, its divine promise and their influence on the heart, its consolation in trials and sufferings, and its preparation for death. All of these truths and statements, which are above and beyond the reach of unsaid, no, that's not what it says, of unaided human reason, combine to stamp its divine origin and compel our reverence. So let me read that again. I'm sorry. My glasses are kind of not, my eyesight's not that great. My glasses are kind of off at this angle, and that's kind of faded right there. So let me read that again. All of these truths and statements, which are above and beyond the reach of unaided human reason, combine to stamp its divine origin and compel our reverence. The books composing the Holy Bible were written in different ages, from Moses to John, BC 1650 to AD 90, a period of more than 1,700 years, by men who were specially prepared for the work by direct inspiration from the divine source of all knowledge. The several books here The several books bear a uniform and unvarying testimony in support of each other by questions, by the express recognitions of the prophets, evangelists, apostles, and the Lord Jesus himself, thus convincing us that in all ages, from that of Moses, to the present, the best men have believed in its divine origin and have acted accordingly. The Hebrews were exceedingly careful about these writings, as an examination of their very complete system for their preservation and interpretation will show. There are references to the writing and the reading of the law in the Old Testament in every age, beginning with Moses. It was read for the instruction publicly in the desert of Sinai, at Kadesh, at the crossing of Jordan, at the great assembly on Ebal and Gerizim, at Shiloh, at the dedication of Solomon's temple, the reform under Hezekiah, and more particularly in the case of the collection of the whole Old Testament by Ezra, who arranged it in the order that is still preserved. This settlement of the canon in its present form is dated from the close of the captivity in Babylon. While the Hebrews were in Assyria, captives, their language fell into disuse, being neglected for the Chaldean in popular use. This made it necessary to appoint teachers of the law of Moses, whose duties were to preserve a knowledge of the Scriptures and the language in which they were written. Ezra was the chief of this class in later years of the captivity. He returned to Jerusalem from Babylon with the exiles, where he completed his great work of compiling, or rather arranging in chronological order, the sacred books, for which service he was called the second Moses, and was dignified with the title of scribe in Hebrew Sefer. When Nehemiah formed the great synagogue, the scribes were recognized as a distinct order in the nation, and seats were given to a number of them in the general assembly among the ruling elders. The work of this body of learned and devout men was, 1, to make the only copies of the sacred scriptures that were allowed to be used; 2, to count the letters in every book and the number of times that each letter occurred in each book and in all the books; 3, to read the law in public on the Sabbath and festival days; 4, to lecture to their disciples, the students of this law, on the meaning of the Holy Scriptures; 5, to arrange the liturgy for public worship; 6, to form the traditions; 7, to protect the law by bylaws which were directed how to copy, keep, and interpret the holy writings; 8, to correct any accidental errors in the original text; and 9, to add to the sacred canon the books of the prophets and of the poets. The writings were not added to the text of the Scriptures, but they were put on the margin near the text which they explained or corrected. Their rules may be judged of from 2 specimens. 1, except every one do keep them, the Scriptures, whole and undefiled, without doubt he shall perish everlastingly. And 2, except a man believe them faithfully, he cannot be saved. This order of learned and devout men continued as a distinct class from B.C. 458 to the end of the captivity in Babylon to B.C. 300, when the order became extinct at the death of Simon the Just. A parallel historical witness is found in the sect of the Samaritans, who, separated from the Jews after the captivity, being composed of Jews and Chaldeans, built a temple on Mount Gerizim made a new creed, and copied the Pentateuch only out of the law for their own use. The mutual hatred between the Samaritans and Jews put it out of the case to suppose that there could have been a collusion between them to add to or change a single word or letter of the sacred writings, and both parties strove to convince the world that their particular copy of the law was the more ancient. They differ but in a very few particulars, which may all be accounted for chiefly as errors of the copyists. Succeeding the scribes were certain teachers of the law, who were called sages, wise ones, elders, and doctors, Tannaim. Their duties were almost identical with those of the scribes whom they succeeded. So that's part 2. I'm going to stop there. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I'm sorry for my staccato reading, and I'm really struggling to see the writing. I got to get my prescription checked or something. But I will continue as long as I can. God bless. Over and out.